Hello, this is Naren water level controller model WLC-2T suitable for monoblock and open well submersible pumps. It is suitable up to 2 HP rating. So the main aspect of using this water level controller is, so there are two tank sensing indications. So this is specifically designed for these applications wherein you have two overhead tanks and a common sump or underground tank. So one of the example may be one tank is a solar tank and the other tank is a domestic tank, wherein in these kind of applications, the water first fills the solar tank, and whenever the water overflows from the solar tank, that is when the main domestic tank gets filled up. That is case one. Or else the next case might be, there are 2 to 3 different floors, and every floor in the house has its own independent tank situated on the top floor. So again, these in all the tanks will have their own independent outlets. So even for those kind of application also, you will have two independent tanks which has to be sensed separately, but it will be a common pipeline for the motor, and it will be a common motor to fill up both the tanks. So even in those case, you can make use of this water level controller. The operation is pretty simple. Whichever tank gets empty, the motor is switched on on basis of the availability of water in the sump. So once the motor switches on, the controller makes sure both the tank is full, and only then the motor is turned off. So irrespective of the tank, whichever is empty, the motor is turned on. It will make sure both the tank fills up, and only then the motor is turned off. So when it comes to the features, it is straightforward. Every tank has a 4 levels indication. So both the tank has its own sensors and own separate independent level indication, and then you have 3 levels of indication for the underground tank or sump. Then you have water flow indication, which is there like all the regular water level controllers, and there's a motor on indication and power on indication, just to indicate the motor is on and the power is up. Then you have a speciality of this need button. So need button is a semi-automatic kind of operation. Let us say your tank is half full and you decide to fill up both the tanks. Only then you can make use of this need button. Pressing this need button will manually turn on the motor, and only when both the tanks are full, the motor is automatically turned off. So these are pretty much the features of this particular water level controller. Now we will quickly have a look at how to make the connections to the starter or the motor, as well as how to connect the sensor wires. So this particular water level controller is suitable for open well submersible motors as well as monoblock motors of single phase. So we will quickly have a look at the connections that has to be made. So when we have a look at the connectors below, so there are first two connectors are incoming phase and neutral. The third and fourth connectors are outgoing phase and neutral. So if you are using a monoblock motor, then the motor cables can be connected directly to these 2 points, 3 and 4, and incoming wire, which is of the same size of motor cable. So we've used 2.5 square mm here. So this same size cable should be connected to 1 and 2. So all these 4 are load carrying wires. Okay. Then if you are using an open well submersible motor, so then every motor will have this kind of a starter, which is called as open well submersible starter. So the starter will have an MCB, a running capacitor, and you will have the 5-way connector, which is incoming phase and neutral, followed by motor cables. So incoming phase and neutral would be given. So what you need to do is you will have to disconnect this incoming phase and neutral and connect the incoming phase and neutral to 1 and 2 of the water level controller, and whatever output which is coming from 3 and 4 of water level controller, so these 2 wires should go as the input to the open well submersible starter. So the incoming wire will first go to 1 and 2 of the water level controller, and the output of water level controller will go as an input to the open well submersible starter. Then the motor cable should be left as it is. And another important thing which you will have to keep in mind is this MCB has to be always in the on position. So it should always be in the on position. Okay. So only when the starter receives the command from water level controller to switch on the motor, only then the motor is turned on. So so once the power connections are done, then we are left with the sensor connections. So if you look at the water level controller model WLC-2T, the sensor provision is connected on the back side. So there are 3 sets of wires which are coming and with their respective indication. So the first one is for the sump indication, the middle one is for the tank 1 indication, and the top one is for tank 2 indication. So these 3 are respective sensors: sensors for sump, sensors for tank 1, and sensors for tank 2. So this is the sump, this is tank 1, and this is tank 2. Also, along with the package, you will receive a packet like this, which contains all the sensors with their color coding. So the sump has 4 sensors with the respective color coding. The common is black, sump low is blue, sump medium is yellow, and sump high is white. So likewise, you will have independent color combinations for all these 3. So sump, tank 1 and tank 2, you will have totally 12 bullet sensors and 2 dry run sensors. So bullet sensor will look something like this. So it's a probe with 1 wire, and the dry run sensor will look like this. So this is a flexible plastic material with 2 wires coming out of it. So we will quickly jump into the sensor connections now. When it comes to the sump connections, initially the first sensor, which is a common sensor, always should be placed at the bottommost point at the floor of the sump. Then comes the sump minimum. So minimum sensor should be placed just above the motor if the motor is submersible type, or at a 25% mark if it's a monoblock motor, just above the foot valve. Then you have the next sensor, which is sump medium. Sump medium will be placed at around 6 inches above the sump low or the minimum. And then the last sensor will be sump high, which will be placed at around 50% mark at the sump. So we are just placing this high sensor at the lower point just to make sure the water level controller turns on the motor even when the level of water in the sump is at 50% mark. So I'll repeat again. The first sensor should be placed at the the bottommost point, common sensor. Then the minimum sensor just above the motor or foot valve. Then medium sensor just above that, maybe 6 inches above that, and the maximum sensor, that is the sump max, the fourth sensor from the bottom at around 50% mark. Then we are left with the 2 tank sensors to be placed. Again, all these 3 have independent common sensors. The common for tank 1 should be placed at the bottommost point, then tank low at around 50% mark, tank medium at around 75% mark, and tank high at around 100% mark. So tank high sensor is the one which turns off the motor when the tank is full. Likewise for the tank 2 also, the first sensor will be placed at the common, the bottommost point. Next you have a sensor at 50% mark, next at 75% mark, and the top sensor at 100% mark. So there are 4 sensors in all these 3 water sources. The low, medium, high with common, low, medium, high for tank 1, common, low, medium, high for tank 2. So totally 12 bullet sensors which are provided in the package. And then we are left with dry run sensor. So dry run sensor looks like this, and this is supposed to be placed on the inlet pipe. So there are 2 diversions from the inlet pipe, one to tank 1 and one to tank 2. So the dry run sensor should be placed at the inlet of independent tanks. So let us say my pipe is the inlet, so my finger is the inlet pipe. So this sensor should be placed on top of the inlet pipe. So this is a very flexible sensor which is made of a flexible material. So this has to be placed, and it can be tagged along using a wire or a tag just to make sure this sits good. Then there are 2 wires coming out of it. So one wire should be connected to common, again the bottommost sensor, and the second wire should be connected to the dry run point. So also the other thing which has to be kept in mind while installing this is there are 2 screws on the dry run sensor. You will have to place this in such a way that the water which is coming and falling inside the tank is first hitting these 2 screws before falling inside the tank. So the screws give the connectivity. This will make sure that it gives the signal to the controller, indicate the water flow. Okay. Likewise, another dry run sensor should be placed for the tank 2 as well. A similar connection, a similar way of placement. The 2 wires one wire will be connected to common of this particular tank, and the other one will be connected to the dry run point. Okay. So this is pretty much the sensor connections. Now we will quickly jump into the operations. So the first case would be one of the tank is getting empty. So let us say a tank 1 is getting empty. So tank 2 is full, even then the motor is turned on because it has this independent sensing. When the tank 1 fills up, that is when the motor turns off. Okay. So the second case would be tank 2 getting empty. So we will see that tank 2 getting empty. So even when the tank 2 is empty and tank 1 is full, even then the motor is turned on. When the tank 2 fills up, so it will automatically turn off the motor. Yeah. Then the case 3 would be both the tanks simultaneously get empty. So you can see the case wherein both the tanks are relatively low. the motor again switched on. So it turns off only when both the tanks are full. So tank 1 is full, so the motor is not off. Then tank 2, the motor is still running. So yeah, when the tank 2 is full, only then the motor is turned off. So the controller will make sure both the tanks are full before turning off the motor. Okay, then we can have a look at the other case as well. Let us say one of the tanks are empty. This tank is empty and the motor is on. So while the motor is running, when the water in the sump gets empty, so this is one of the important scenario to consider. So when this gets empty, so you can see the motor turning off because there is no water in the sump. So when the water comes inside the sump, the motor automatically switches on again. So the water is back in the sump, the motor is turned on by the controller, detecting the availability of water. And when the tank 2 is full, so only then the motor is turned off. So the advantage of having this is, irrespective of the tank which is getting empty and based on the level of water available in the sump, the motor is turned on and it will make sure both the tanks are independently filled up before turning off. So the last option which we didn't see is the provision of this need button. So let us say both the tanks are almost at around 50% mark, or we can even lower these sensors here. Okay, so both the tanks are at 50% mark and we decide to fill up both the tanks for some reason, because we might get to know that there won't be power for the next couple of hours and you want to make sure the tanks are full, or there are some guests arriving. There are many cases here. So in that case, what you can do is you can make a use of this need button. Pressing this button will manually turn on the motor. Only when both the tanks fill up, the motor is automatically turned off. So it's like a semi-automatic operation. So manual turning on and automatic turning off. So we can have a look. So only when both the tanks are full, the motor is automatically shut off. So this is pretty much the operations of this water level controller model WLC-2T. As mentioned before, this is suitable for open well sub motors as well as monoblock motors. And I hope the video was clear. Any queries, you can always reach us out on 99722 This is our contact number. It's 99722 You can also browse our products on our website. Our website address is www.narenelectrics.in. So this is our website. And if at all you are in need of any other products of us, you can always reach us out either through mobile phone or contacting us through our website. And there are many more products of us which you can always browse. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Yeah, please subscribe, or if you have any doubts, you can always drop in the comment section. Thank you.